Hey, what's up, everybody? I wanted to take a minute and welcome you to the Donut Shop podcast. I had a suggestion from somebody who watches the show and thought it was a good idea. I'm always open to suggestions about the show. And he mentioned that I never usually introduce myself or at least tell you about who I am. And with adding new fans or new viewers all the time, it might be a good idea to go over that. So, my name is Justin. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I'm actually getting ready for retirement. I'm going to retire and start doing this podcasting stuff full time. During my career, I've worked on road patrol. I've been a crisis negotiator, did that for about 8 years. It was great training, learned a lot about mental health and working with people. I was a school resource officer. I worked in the elementary school and then in the high school. I did that for 6.5 years. Then I also moved into the community resource unit and public information officer unit. So I did a lot of community engagement. I ran our social media for the department. And then I also spoke with the news. Kind of leads into this, even though I was a podcaster before I was in that unit. I've been doing podcasting since about 2012. I started with a soccer podcast with some friends for a local soccer team. We had a great time. It was a little different than this, obviously, but I was on the mic and doing that kind of stuff. Then eventually in 2020, started this podcast with a friend of mine, Nick, and he's no longer on the show, but the show drives on, and here we go. Basically, it's a cop sitting in a donut shop and someone interesting walks in. They don't always have to be law enforcement based. As a law enforcement officer, we know when we're in uniform, pretty much everybody comes up and talks to us. Especially when we're trying to take a break and eat dinner or eat a lunch or something like that. It's not usually a bother, and sometimes you get interesting stories out of it. So that's kind of where I created the premise for this podcast and what it is today. Now let's get into the episode.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Donut Shop podcast. Today's guest is Chad Jensen, a retired law enforcement officer whose career spanned over 2 decades, working patrol, motors, and SWAT, also earning recognition for life-saving efforts and service to his community. But Chad's story didn't end with a traditional retirement. What started as a routine arrest at the Los Angeles County Fair turned into a multi-year federal investigation, criminal charges, and a fight against the very system he once served. After facing the FBI, the Department of Justice, and multiple trials, Chad was ultimately exonerated. Spoiler alert.
Mm-hmm.
But the personal and professional costs of the battle changed everything. This conversation is about policing, pressures, perception, and what happens when the system turns on one of its own. So what's up, Chad? Thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, sir, man. Happy to be here.
So you worked in Southern California, more specifically Pomona, California, which is kind of a suburb of Los Angeles, right?
Correct. Yes. It's the easternmost city in Los Angeles County.
So no beaches.
No.
East. It's hard for me being in South Florida. I'm used to East being the beach, but whenever I go to California, I always have to remember when we're talking about driving towards like Long Beach or the beach or something like that. It's like, wait a minute, I got to go west. So it's a different world.
No beaches, my friend. No.
So I know your story, especially in the book. So we're here kind of talking about your book. If you want to flash it up and show them, I know you had a hard copy you showed me a second ago. So Badge Under Fire. So you've got that book, and I'll have links below because it's available, right?
Yes, sir. It's come out on the 24th.
I'll have links below in the comment or in the description so that if anybody wants to grab a hold of it, you can. We'll talk about that today. And I know it kind of your story doesn't necessarily start with the whole, so I went to the academy on the first day. Your story kind of starts, further back in life with sort of your childhood and kind of bouncing around. So where, kind of tell me about that and like how that built you up.
Yeah, I mean, especially when I wrote this book, because I'm not a writer, right? As cops, we are see Dick run, right? Dick runs fast, Dick
Yeah,
steals this, whatever. I'm not a
yeah,
writer, so I definitely had to have some help. So I enlisted the help of a ghostwriter, which they're licensed professionals. They're like artists. This is
yeah.
what they do, and they're professionals, obviously. But so yeah, we just talked about, we didn't want it to just be the federal trial, and that was it. A lot of character development, you know what I mean, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So but no, I was born in Southern California, lived quintessentially, in Southern California, Los Angeles area. And, my parents both been married and divorced, half a dozen times almost each. So I
Oh,
just kind of
wow.
bounced around all over Southern California. And I kind of go into that in the book just to kind of give people a little flavor of, what my upbringing was, which obviously there's people that had worse ones, you know what I mean? But by no stretch of the imagination was it a Norman Rockwell existence, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, and I
yeah.
mean that's definitely important to explain and
Mhm,
to work on, sort of like you said, character development where
mhm,
you're and they talk to us about in police work, like when we're cops,
mhm,
people will say, like we want the cops that are, grizzled or that had shady backgrounds so that they understand how to talk to people. And I by
mhm,
no means am that cop or was that cop. Like, I mean, I had the, to quote you, Norman Rockwell style, parents are still married, still live together, all that kind of stuff. It definitely takes a broad stroke or a broad
mhm,
difference of police officers, but I definitely learned a lot from people like you
mhm.
that had different pasts than I did or different upbringings for sure. So
Right.
and we all have to come together to form a team to
Mhm.
help police society for sure.
But that's a good point, man. Because I remember back, I started in 96, 97. You couldn't be 21 or 22 years old and be a cop, at least in our city. 25, 26
Oh wow.
was when you started to get looked at because they wanted people to have life experience, right? I don't want a new cop learning life experience lessons on the city's dime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you get guys that come in there that have done, some dumb stuff in their background. I mean, I don't want perfect guys. I don't want the 22-year-old kid that just graduated from college who has no life experience. Nobody's for sure, nobody on the street's going to take him serious, and
Yeah.
like I said, going to some domestic violence call, you're having a kid who, grew up in Mayberry, he's not going to understand, inner city Pomona, how it is, dealing with domestic violence situations and cultural stuff as well. I mean, that's a big one. Culture plays a huge part in domestic violence and stuff that, matters of the house.
Oh yeah. So and then that's the thing. With Southern California and Pomona, like
Mhm,
what's your, I mean, we can kind of get into that for a
mhm.
second. What's like the demographic like? Is it a general Caucasian white suburbia, or is it a more Hispanic, Spanish, black, like,
Right. It's funny because, on paper, it was like 58% white and like 34% Hispanic and then like 6% black and then other, right? But that's coming off of the census, right? There's 50
Yeah,
to 80,000 people in our city that don't partake in the census because,
right.
they don't need to. So it was predominantly a working class Hispanic city. That was predominantly, or the north side was black-ish, kind of, but that was more in the 70s and 80s. And then a lot of those people got locked up in the early 90s and stuff like that. So they all filtered away, and it really became a working class Hispanic city.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, and that's there's so and then there's all kinds of stuff. Those that's got a little bit to kind of what we see today, where we're dealing with immigration type stuff, and it's still I don't think a lot. Well, yeah, it's changed a little bit as
Mhm.
far as immigration because there's probably even more fear, but there was still probably fear back when you worked there with immigration and dealing with people, and so you kind of had to probably look at that with as being a cop. I mean, we're kind of talking about the cop work, so I mean, I guess I'm fast
Right.
forwarding a little bit
Mhm.
in the story, but uh,
Mhm.
so but So continuing on with your background,
Yeah.
like, how did that build up? Like, did you always want to be a police officer?
Yeah, I have kind of a funny story about when I decided when I was a kid. I was like 8 years old or something, and about 8 or 9 years old, and I'm skateboarding with my best friend at the time, just grade school knucklehead kids, flying down the hill, crossing streets, not looking anywhere. Just we could have been absolutely, creamed by a car, but we blow across, Foothill Boulevard. Some cop happens to be right there,
Yeah.
and this is probably 1976, 1976, 75. And so sure enough, man, he's on the curb. And when I tell you this guy was straight out of like these old 70s cop, big, thick caterpillar mustache. You can't even see his lips, mirrored sunglasses, and literally had a wheel gun on his hip. You know what I mean? Gets out of the car and just kind of reads us both the riot act for being, knuckleheads, scares the bejesus out of us, sends us home. And I was like, man, that was the coolest thing freaking ever, dude. And hearing the radio crackle, you know what I mean? And getting out of the car, it just called to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was something I could never shake. And then like throughout my life, I just would make, make decisions that would preclude me from doing that job, whether it was, getting married, getting somebody pregnant or whatever. I was a mess. And so it just never came to fruition until I was 30 years old, and to where I could finally, get things squared away in my life where I could afford now, because I have all these kids. You got to provide
How
for
many kids
yourself.
did you have?
I had 4 at that time.
All right.
You know what I mean? So it was, and living in Southern California, it's not cheap,
No.
so I had to, at that time, my second wife, she was, enabled me to be able to go to the academy, you know what I mean? Take that pay cut,
Oh, right.
and, because, policing back then, you weren't making the money you are now. I mean, cops now they make a fairly good living. You know what I mean? If you're willing to put in the work and the time, you make a decent living,
Yeah. There's there for positive. There's a lot of
Mhm,
opportunity. I know the city I
mhm,
used to work for had a lot of opportunity for off-duty work,
mhm,
to supplement your time, especially when you're early on in your career and you are at the lower pay rate. But I don't necessarily correct people like outright when they're like, "Oh, you cops, you don't get paid enough."
mhm,
But I definitely look at them and I go, "Look, man, we're doing okay. Like we're healthy."
yeah,
Now, there, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of places, like I think for you in Southern California and for me in
mhm,
South Florida, we're kind of even like geographically the outliers as
mhm,
well as financially the outliers. In South Florida, we do pretty well,
mhm,
even at the base rate of pay.
yeah,
It, but like you said, it's not cheap to live in both
mhm,
of these places that we're living in. So
100%.
if you can manage it appropriately, you can make a good amount of money and make a good
Mhm,
living, doing it. As well as in California, I'm sure there's plenty of off-duty work, to be done, through the city, through the county, that kind
mhm,
of stuff. So, that's I definitely worked my butt off in the early years, um, adding to my uh, my annual salary. Didn't
right.
add it at the time. It didn't add like details. Off duty stuff didn't add to our pension. It
Mhm.
still doesn't in my city, but whatever, it adds to my paycheck, and it allows me to allowed me to be a crazy ass and buy all the crap that I wanted to buy.
It
Um,
was called right now money, dude, and that's what I lived on. I lived on right now money. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
immediately. Yeah.
exactly, for sure.
Mhm,
So 30 years old, that
mhm,
definitely speaks to what you said, like, where,
mhm,
like, Pomona didn't really want people or didn't
mhm,
really look at people till after 25. Now you're
mhm,
talking 30, and you've definitely got life skills. You mentioned domestics and stuff like that. I'm sure you'd
mhm.
already had plenty in your life, coming up
Yeah.
to 30,
Mhm.
being that you had, young children and stuff like that. So do you think that helped you, with the job coming in at 30?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it's like you got to go through bad relationships to realize what a good relationship is, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's very true with law enforcement. You got to be able to experience what, because you can't go in and attempt to try and reason with people that you have no idea what they're going through or what they're experiencing,
Right.
and having that ability to understand, man, there, you know what I mean? So maybe this guy's just got to calm down for a little while, blow off a little bit of steam. Hey, I'll talk to you for 10 minutes, man. I don't want to take you to jail. You know what I mean? I have no desire to wreck your life by taking you to jail. You're just pissed off and you had nobody to talk to. Unfortunately, I'm the guy. I got to listen to it today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I actually enjoyed. Was I enjoy talking. I enjoy just getting to know people and talking. So that really helped me out. And then, there's cops that don't like to talk, you know what I mean? So it just kind of, it's the luck of the draw. But yeah, having that life experience and going through the things that I went through both as a kid and as a young adult, you know what I mean? And that definitely was helpful. For sure.
Yeah, it's sometimes it was always frustrating to me when I'd be on calls with those guys, because I'm like you said, look, man, I'm getting paid one way or the other if I'm standing here or I'm sitting under a tree. So I'm just gonna listen as long as you're not trying to kill me. Like I've all night to sit here and listen to you until something dangerous, something crazy goes off on the radio that I need to leave. But let's talk. And then there's guys that would be there on a call with you, and they just they're rushing stuff, or they start pushing buttons because they're like, if I can get this guy to pop off, then at least we got something to arrest him on, and we can get out of this call. And like I hear it, like with what you said, I would Dr. Phil it. I would listen to it and they'd be like, oh, Dr. Phil's here or whatever. And I'm like, look, man, if we can get this guy to never call us again because we've taught him some or given him some tools to help him either with his problem or a way to look at things differently, because we've all looked at this same scenario 5, 6, 7 times in the last month and a half from different people. And we'll tell you what we've seen that worked with somebody and then what we don't think is going to work, and in judging with some of the other factors. So that's one thing that was definitely fun for me. Most nights, some nights your temper's like right here and you're short fuse nights, but most of the time I was willing to sit there and listen to people talk about some of their problems, because there was some amazing problems that some people would have for themselves.
Well, and it's the classic case of, you have a couple that's been together 20, 25 years. You're like, you know what, hey, pal, dude, it's taking you 25 years to get to this place. We're not going to solve it in 26 minutes. You know what I mean? But we're going to do our best to deal with it.
That is for sure, of course. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we will be back and talk about some kind of stuff during your career, facets of your career that, like I mentioned in the intro. Be right back. Yo, what's up, everybody? I want to let you know I have a new website format. Same website, donutshoppodcast.com. But this time I'm running it through Shopify. Make it much easier to purchase items, because aside from the hats that I have up there, Donut Shop Podcast, PVC hats, the blue line snapback, laser mesh, nice and clean on the inside, comfy hats, I have some other swag, t-shirts, can koozies, just some other stuff that I put up there. I'm running the website through Shopify, and so it'll make it real easy for you guys to go on and purchase some stuff and support the show. So thanks for tuning in and following the show. And don't forget, donutshoppodcast.com. Thanks. All right, we're back. So, yeah, like in the intro, I said, what did I say? Motors, traffic motors.
Yes, sir.
Oh, God.
Oh yeah.
You guys, that's something that I have.
I love it. No, it's just motors.
Oh, okay.
Motors always get that, and it's well deserved too, man. It's a specific job you got to be willing to do. It's not for everybody.
So I have a friend. He's retired now, but he runs a lot of times in South Florida, the motorcycle rodeo. So you guys probably have it in Cali. The cops going through cones and zipping around, doing all that kind of stuff, because it's all part of the original training that you got to do to get into motors. That's brutal. But I've called him before because we've had a large amount, and I'm turning this podcast into something else right now. We've had, and we see, and I've had a close personal friend die due to a palm frond falling
Wow.
while he was Charlie Herring from Pembroke Pines Police Department. Always say his name. Just traveling back to station down a side road, and we have these royal palms. I don't know if you guys have them in California, but they're freaking huge, and they're used as barriers in the roads to usually keep cars from crossing medians. But when they drop palm fronds, they are 20 to 30 pound palm fronds coming down off the ground. I might be exaggerating with 30, but 15 to 20 pound palm fronds coming down, especially with the force and the speed coming down. Knocked him off his bike, crashed, and he died on scene. Terrible. Tragic. And that coupled with the, Secret Service motorcade or sheriff's office driving like bats out of hell to block intersections for people that could give two craps about stopping at a red light, gets nailed. So you've seen it, especially since you've ridden it. My question to my friend Chris is always, why do we still have them? Why do you guys still have a position in law enforcement other than nostalgia? The motorcycle gang nostalgia. Sorry, I'm going to talk major crap, and I hope you get mad at me about it and want to argue it.
I'm going after it right now. All right, I can take it. It's okay.
It
You're
festers.
not the first, you won't be the last.
I did the funeral. It festers. So
yeah. No, I just, what's crazy is I was a big Chips fan when I was a kid, right? Like Eric Estrada, you know what I mean? All that Punch and John stuff. Man, I love that show. And that was in the back of my mind. Once I became a police officer, I was like, dude, I really want to get on motors, man, because they still had the Kawasaki motors, tall boots, you know what I mean? And I loved it. And, but when you get onto motors, it's kind of like working beach patrol for you guys probably, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, man, I want to go work beach patrol, oh yeah, there's kind of some pretty girls out there. It's not the worst thing I have to look at every day. But you know what? After doing it for 6 months, you're like, dude, I don't even want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? Motors is the same way. I mean, you can take so many pictures of yourself and you can see yourself in the mirror of the businesses when you're driving down the street. You can look at yourself so many times to where you're like, yeah, I'm done with that. But in my time in traffic after that initial first 6 months, to be honest with you, we had a good opportunity for overtime within traffic that wasn't available out of patrol, and special event detail, like you were talking, like contract overtime wasn't super prevalent, didn't have a whole lot of it at the time. And so motors has its own amount of overtime that you can get because it's a specialty unit, right? Specialty detail. So, but that was kind of why I stayed there for 8 years. I mean, there was many people that came in 2, 3, 4, 5 years and they're gone. I stayed there because honestly, man, I had to pay a lot of child support, you know what I mean? And I needed the money, you know what I mean? And I did what I had to do. I enjoyed it. I had a good partner that I worked with every single day, usually, good. That the group of guys that you work with is all that makes it, and a good supervisor. You know what I mean? But it was, but as far as why do we still have motors? Why do we still have traffic enforcement on bikes? I think it's definitely, you can get places on a bike you can't get to in a car. Doing a 3-point U-turn in a patrol unit versus being able to do a U-turn on a bike, you can't compete with that. But you're right, it's dangerous, man. And by, the grace of God, I never went down. Well, I went down one time on my bike. Can I tell you the story real quick?
Go for it, man.
So I'm not going to brag on myself, but I was a pretty good rider, right? I'd been riding like dirt bikes my whole life since I was, 5 years old. So getting on a motor and stuff and doing the job of motor cop it wasn't challenging to me. So my cockiness kind of caught up with me one day. I'm doing traffic on West Holt, end up, writing a citation, coming back, and I'm going to swing around to, pull up next to your partner. Cause you got to, you ride partners, you got to look cool. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm up, I get out and I'm going to get off. I'm going to take my jacket off. Right. Cause it's getting a little warm, So I go to put my kickstand down on my BMW, nice brand new bike. Right.
Well, and so there's one question I want to interrupt with. You guys are riding the BMW kind of upward sitting forward,
cruiser
style
types.
of bikes versus
Touring.
the Road King style Harleys.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And going from the Kawasaki kind, like from Chips, the Kawasaki Police 1000, which had no ABS, was they should have never put cops on those bikes. They're death traps. But
Yeah.
and then we went straight into the BMW 1100s, the 1200, the RS models. You know what I mean? Phenomenal bikes. You know, full ABS and everything like that. So
Yeah.
phenomenal, very safe bikes. So I pull in next to my partner and I freaking put my kickstand down and it broke, right? It broke off. So I tumbled off my bike, come down, and I hit right on my freaking butt bone. And man, it hurt, dude. It hurt bad. And so how do you put that on the radio? How do you do that? You're thinking to yourself, all right, man, oh, dang, how am I going to put this out? Because you're not down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, so you go to an alternate channel and you're praying that you got one of your friendly dispatchers on there that's not going to blow you up, you know?
Yeah. Alert tone the whole thing and stuff.
Yeah. You know,
but you didn't let a supervisor know. I'm going to alert the supervisor.
or they call everybody and they sound the general alarm and everybody rolls up and you're on your fat butt sitting on the, you know, pavement or whatever. But that was, you know, I ended up being okay, but you know, just some lumbar issues with it. But that was the only time that I ever went down, you know, on my bike, dude. But it was, you know, you drop it plenty of times, you know what I mean? Especially doing those cone patterns, you know what I mean? You're that thing's up and down all the time. But that time I fell down and rolled, and it probably looked funny as hell to everybody on the street. But
yeah. Well, I mean, at least it didn't land on you.
Right.
You were able to at least kill somewhat. It sounds like somewhat safely.
Yeah.
You know, and it didn't land on top of you. Yeah. One of our guys, Kevin, had a similar thing. He was in that, you know, that pitch out angle, you know, watching the traffic coming, but they were like over top of you know, in Florida, you know, we've got the rain everywhere. It's got the rain gutter kind of that runs along the city or along the road. Well, there was a mildew in it. So it was mildewy because Florida, we're humid as hell. And it's either he went to take off and his rear tire kicked out because of the mildew, because it was almost lined right up with it, and it just spun and fishtailed, and he lost it. And he ended up twisting, kind of like putting his foot down and then doing that kind of twist. And it really, he was all up there in age, but it also, it kind of ended his career. He got put on a like sort of a light duty status, ran the red light camera systems for a while and sort of, you know, faded off, but didn't get back on a bike, obviously, you know, just due to the extensive surgeries that he needed to repair his ankle and everything like that. So that's another one that I tack up there in the list of guys that I've seen get injured unnecessarily in my mind, where if he was getting into a Crown Victoria or an Explorer and fishtailed a little bit, okay, whatever. I don't even care if a freaking Civic ran into the back of him while he was doing it. The level of injury, most likely whiplash, maybe not, level of injury would be way different in a cage versus on that unprotected apparatus. So that's just my silent crusade against motors.
All right. Motors, but, attention, motor cops, don't go to Justin's PD. Okay.
You don't strike me as the guy that got the motor wings tattooed on his shoulder. So you're not gonna.
There are those guys. I am not one. No, my body is a temple. There's no tattoos on this bad boy.
I need, so those are the guys that I need to get into a debate with and an argument with, that I need to really prove it to me. You know, you've given me a bit of an easy argument back. Those guys with the tattoo are just like, look, man, I got this freaking tattoo. I got to fight for life for this thing now. You know, the motor wings are life. So, you know, I just because there's enough stacked against us, just me grandstanding still, there's enough stacked against us in the career that for us doing some of the more risky maneuvers that we do. You know,
that was with me real quick. I mean, I was on motors and SWAT at the same time. So that with my wife, Amy, I mean, it was just like a constant battle for her, because police work's dangerous enough. Okay, we're going to go B, we're going to put you on a bike. Okay, that's a little more. And then you're going to go do SWAT. Okay, well, now you are the trifecta of either stupidity or dangerous, you know? So, and that lasted for a while until, you know, I got to the point where something's got to give. You know what I mean?
So. Well, and that was going to kind of be my transition to it. And you did it nicely for me. So SWAT in your career. Another dangerous scenario. Especially in the Los Angeles area where SWAT was pretty much created.
Yes, sir.
So, tell me a little bit about that aspect of your career and kind of how that went for you.
Oh yeah, obviously everybody, as a young patrol cop, when you're getting on the streets, one of your pinnacles of your career, would be to be one of these, SWAT guys, right?
Yeah,
Because they were just a little bit cooler than everybody else. You know
a
what I
lot
mean?
of
And again,
lot cooler.
yeah. And the team was made up of people that had been there at least probably at least 5 to 7 years. Most of them are 10 to 15-year guys, right? Before they get on the team. Most of them are in phenomenal physical shape, and people that you just looked up to because like when I came on the department, I mean, there was freaking giants that were cops. I mean, you
Yeah,
looked up to them. They were larger than life figures. And what's crazy now, I just don't see those types of cops anymore. Whether we don't make them or whether that was the, VHS generation or whatever, but
hmm,
I just don't see that level of police officer anymore. Maybe there's exceptions to the rules, of course, but on average, you just don't see them. So to be into that group and accepted into that group, that was what you wanted to ascend to. You wanted to get there. And it took you 2 or 3 times of trying out, you know what I mean? And just really getting humbled, realizing that, yeah, these guys are that good because they work out all the time. They run all the time. You know what I mean? So I had to step my game up, get in that. Once I got on SWAT, it was awesome. Obviously being the new guy is no fun because you're on perimeter all the time. You're not doing any of the fun stuff, but you just got to work your way through. And then once I went to SWAT school after a few months of being on, that was an awesome time. The
yeah,
SWAT school was the best. I mean, and I went with a buddy of mine, Dave, and man, it's an awesome time. You know what I mean? And then coming back from SWAT school, and then our team, unfortunately, we were a part-time team. Okay.
okay,
So you were still on patrol or on motors or whatever. We didn't have an independent team that's all they did. So
right,
unfortunately our training, we didn't do enough training. You know what I mean? Our trainings were, man, like, once a month or maybe an additional one here and there. We just were not putting the lead down range that in order to be a good team, you got to be shooting rounds, dude, constantly. So
yeah,
unfortunately, we didn't have the funding to do that. We did the best we could, but it was a great time. In my book, I got a whole bunch of stories in this book about learning stuff the hard way, and the fact that what you miss the most is what you hated the most when you did it. Like getting ribbed, right? You screwed up, you did something, you didn't cover this, you didn't do that. We are relentlessly going to bust your balls. We are going to smash you until you cry. Why?
yeah,
Because we like you, right? It's
yeah,
where if we didn't like you, we just wouldn't even talk to you. You know what I mean? Just, yeah, on to the next one. And yeah, you're out of the stack. You know what I mean? So it's just, that is what I really miss about the job is all the ribbing that you get back and forth with each other. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And, and the debriefs, the team debriefs, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And, but yeah, just getting onto the entry team, that was a big step. I loved that. That was a lot of fun. I went to, different schools. You know how it is. You get to go to all these cool schools. You go to
Right,
breaching
right, right.
school, chemical impact munitions school, all that. You know what I mean? So I was never a gun nut, like, I don't have the Glock sticker in my back window and all that. That's not me, but I enjoyed it for the 8.5 years I was there doing it.
So
It was a good
that
time.
was, you kind of did that for 8.5,
Yeah.
getting
Hmm.
close to a decade
Yeah.
worth of work doing that.
Hmm.
And you did it starting after 30. So you're in
Hmm.
your 30s, whereas, a
Yes, sir.
lot of times you see the guys that are,
Hmm.
either fresh out of the military at 24, 25, coming
Yeah.
in, just carrying over that high speed nature
Hmm.
or whatever. You're coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
You've maybe got a little bit of dad bod going on. I don't know. Um, you
I
know,
love to run, so I was lucky that way. I had a
okay.
really high metabolism, you know what I mean? And I just love to run. So endurance things was not a problem for me. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
couldn't put on weight. I know I look like it now, but I couldn't put on weight, man. You know what I mean? Like I graduated the academy at like 168 pounds, 6'1",
Wow.
168 pounds. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, wiry
Yeah.
then. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I
So
just love to run, and my cardio was there, you know? So,
oh,
if if I had to chase a bad guy 5 miles, dude, I could do it, you know? But
excellent.
it's unfortunately, marathon bad guys don't exist, right? We're not
Yeah,
chasing
yeah.
you
My buddy
26 miles.
Ben, that I worked with, he's a track coach, he's
Mhm.
cross country coach, and all that stuff. And he said like when he used to chase guys, he'd just be like almost one of those like running next to him, like, "Hey, dude, like how
Whatever
long you
you're
want to
doing.
go for? Like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can keep going. I could do this all day, like,
Mhm.
or you could just stop, you know."
Yeah.
So like that's, I mean, it's a good way to be, and that's a lot of SWAT tryouts do that where
Mhm.
they test endurance. They
Mhm.
want to see, the never quit, because, and part of that comes from the military
Yeah.
aspect of it. But it's great. And yeah, my city has a part-time SWAT team. They do get to train every other week, and thankfully for that. But it's rare these days, unless it's a big city like a Miami or a
Mhm.
Los Angeles, that has a full-time one, because it's just, we're trying to allocate bodies and manpower as much as you
Yeah.
can. So you've
100%.
got to let these guys, and then, in my opinion, you can, with having a patrol guy or somebody on motors that's out there hitting the
Mhm.
streets, when you have a scenario pop up, you have a higher trained individual that is there as fast as a patrolman, or
Yeah.
they are the patrolman that
Mhm.
is two zones over and they're just coming. So
Mhm.
there's definitely an argument to be made for having your uh, patrol officers mixed in, because other some places like Broward County, where I'm at, their full-time guys are kind of warrant squad 2 guys,
Mhm.
so at
Yeah.
least it gives them something to do. They can go out and do the more high risk stuff.
Mhm.
um, but they may not be as readily available. Um,
Yeah. And it
you know,
always anytime like you would have some type of really critical incident that you're going to that you know how it is. I don't know, sure it's your way in your department, but there is a handful of guys that you would take to a gunfight, right?
yeah,
If the 60 cops, just pick a group of 60, there's probably 5 or 7 that you would say, I'll go to gunfight with those guys. The other
yeah,
ones, hey man, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for having my back, XYZ. But you know how it is. I mean, and when
yeah,
you have a guy that you've trained with on SWAT, or you've gone to SWAT schools or whatever with, it's very nice when that person rolls around the corner on your call. Not that I don't trust everybody else. We're all still police officers. We're all on the big blue team. Got it. But there's a different level to it when you've trained with this person exclusively, and you
yeah.
two know how to. The two of us can clear a building quicker than if I had 6 guys trying to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, totally, yeah, and then,
Yeah.
like, the canine guys will say the same thing. They're like,
Hmm.
If I'm tied up dealing with this
Hmm.
dog, analyzing every movement that this dog's doing, looking for an armed person,
Hmm.
I don't want the guy walking with me to be
Yeah.
nervous, to be scared,
Hmm.
to be
Yeah.
questioning whether he should pull the trigger or not,
Hmm.
because the canine guys are like, look, my gun's in the holster, like,
Hmm.
I'm not racked ready to go,
Yeah.
like, I'm focused on this dog. And so those are the guys that you hear it from the most, with picking their team, picking their
Hmm.
partners to go out on a track. Plus they want to know the guy's not going to be all like out of shape
Right.
and winded.
Hmm.
So
Or that guy that's scared to get bit, right? You know how it is when
yeah.
you're canine, especially if it's on a long lead and no muzzle, because some of those dogs, man, they're not right up stop. You know what I mean? They're they're
No,
they're
no, no.
missing some marbles, those Malinois especially,
Yeah.
that you can't be thinking, oh my God, is he gonna bite me? Because you're gonna put
Yeah.
off that scent and he's gonna freaking take a hunk out of your butt, man.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And you just got to trust, if you're that
Mhm.
backup officer, that the canine guy is going to get the dog off of you as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Don't, they used to tell us in trainings and stuff like, don't fucking shoot my dog.
Right. Yeah.
If anything,
He's freaking
please
biting
do
me,
not.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Please do not shoot my dog. You are not a
Mhm.
hero if you shoot one of our own dogs,
Yep.
that kind of thing. So I'm going to take a break, but before we
Sure.
do that, I want to ask you, and then after the break, we can kind of roll into the other meat of the story.
Mhm.
But so, like the job at its best, before things went sideways, after the break that we'll talk about. What was like a moment or some of these moments in your career that made you say like, this is exactly what I signed up for. Like, this is what I wanted to do.
Okay. Hmm.
Because you had idolized it since you were like 8 years old, looking for it. And you kind of, you know, went
Yeah.
straight, you know.
Right. I mean, the first call that I got for a good hot 211, right? Like you're close and it's a good call. It's good this, that there's a high probability you're actually going to see him because it's not
Yeah.
across the city. You're not there. You're like blocks away from this thing. So as I'm coming southbound, what was it? Hamilton, there was a 211 at the Shell station on South Gary, with a machine gun, quote unquote. Right.
Ooh, so that's a robbery
So,
then.
right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, robbery.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So
All
yeah,
good.
armed robbery occurs, and I'm stepping it up, trying to get to the location or get in the area that you think that he's gonna, the egress you think he's gonna take. So sure
Yeah.
enough, he comes barreling around the corner on two wheels, man, like this. There's the car. Boom. So we jump in, and this time I'm still on training. My normal FTO is off, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I'm with a guy who is kind of very high speed, you know what I mean, and very critical, right? Because most of the FTOs back then were bullies, man. But that's what you needed,
Right.
And so where I jump in behind this car, and he's like, "Stay with him, stay with him." And then all of a sudden, I'm right on his ass, and he's like, "Hey, back off, dude! He's got a machine gun." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So we go. He jumps out of the car. Car crashes into a house. Foot pursuit goes along, airship. We finally get the guy in custody, and we go back. And sure enough, there's a Tech 9, machine pistol right there on the floorboard, driver's side. And it was like, this was badass. You know what I mean? It was awesome. This is because I wanted to be, that was the reason that I got into law enforcement, is because I truly wanted to be Batman. You know what I mean? I wanted to take every single person to jail that needed to go to jail. And I wanted to be a crime fighter, man. I wanted to be, put some bad guys in jail. You know what I mean? And and luckily in Pomona, we were very busy. We were an extremely busy city. We didn't have a lot of cops. We were probably like 160 was our sworn at the time. And our city is better part of 200,000. You know what I mean? So, and it's only 26 square miles. But we have some very good gang areas in our city. You know what I mean? And that was what I loved about it. And then once you get on your own and you're able to go hook up with a partner and you can go out on foot somewhere and some housing project somewhere, that's the best times, man. Interrupting dope deals, foot pursuits on, getting guns and stuff like that. It was just fun times, and then I was all done with that. And that's when I was like, all right, it's time to go to traffic. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I mean, you play with that, for a while, and
Right.
you get experience in doing that, and then it's just, there's a lot of realms within police work that you can kind of bounce around, and I say that about when I got kicked out of public information and community resource. I was really good at my job, but I kind of didn't make the chief happy with sort of debating him on a topic, and I was like, well, I'm
Isn't
getting
that the
kicked back
freaking
to what
truth?
I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I get kicked back to what I signed up to do. So that's another kind of luxury, sadness, of course, but it's like, hey, I'm going back to do the job that I signed up for. So,
And you keep it fresh too, though, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Because when you get stale as a cop, you age quicker. You got to, the neat thing about that job is you can reinvent yourself, right? Like you were in PIO for a while, then you get out of that or whatever. Like I did that after motors, went back to patrol, got promoted. And then I went to training and backgrounds. You know what I mean? And I went out there, I had a freaking awesome time, doing backgrounds and special event and stuff like that. I had a wonderful time. And then that's when I was able to do some of the community stuff, like Cops for Kids and stuff like that, where you're kind of at the 20-year mark in your career. You know what I mean? And I've seen enough blood, guts, and gore. I don't really need to see that anymore. You know what I mean? I've seen enough.
Yeah.
And I've chased enough bad guys, and I've outlived 8 of my 9 lives. So let's just take it easy,
Yeah.
And I had a blast, man. Worked with a good crew of guys, you know what I mean? And we had a blast, and you just got to continue to reinvent yourself. It's awesome.
I talked to one of my former police chiefs on an episode, and it'll come out.
Mhm.
It's in the scheme of things, it has already come out
Mhm.
when this interview is out. And one of the things he talked about was, that I'll kind of update it a little bit to like what you said. If the staleness happens or
Mhm.
somebody's unhappy with where they're at in the police department, he said he kind of prided himself on he didn't just wash them out. He didn't just
Mhm.
try to get them fired, get them out of the job. It was, hey, you've been a good employee. You can be a good employee again. Where can I put you? And so my reply to him was kind of the square peg in the square hole
Mhm.
type thing. Like, can we move you to something else that's gonna, like you said, reinvigorate you, kind of spice you up a little bit, let you focus on something else. You may have something going on in the outside world, or it may be something internally. And that's sort of the frustrating thing that I see. The contrary to that is when bosses are like, this guy's a fucking thorn in my side.
Mhm.
Let's get him out of here. Let's make his life a living hell, so that he just quits or gets, retires or whatever.
Mhm.
This job ain't for him. But there could be a position available for you that your style could excel in. And, I think maybe we're losing some of that in leadership. And I tried to pigeonhole the chief into that conversation, but he's still a chief at heart. So he,
Mhm.
he
Mhm.
deflected and worked his way
Yeah.
around. And as a public information officer, I understood what was happening. So I was like, I'm not gonna break this wall.
Right.
So it is what it is. He didn't necessarily sign up. I bothered him to come on the
Mhm.
podcast. So he wasn't as open as I would have
Mhm.
liked, but
Sure.
it is what it is.
I mean, you
So
understand. I get it. Yeah, I get
yeah,
it. Yeah, for
he's
sure.
he's a boss. Here, once a boss, always a boss. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, so I'm going to drop a commercial, and then
Okay.
we'll be right back, and we'll talk about the dark times. Hey, what's up, everybody? I wanted to tell you about my Patreon. I've opened up a Patreon, just like my friends over at Anti-Hero, with good advice from Tyler. I feel like this is going to be a great opportunity to, get to know the audience. Patreon's an interesting platform. I can post some videos. I can do some stuff. I want to, do some cooking on it. I've been cooking pretty much every night now, and I wanted to put some of these recipes that I get from a website, and I'll share all that on Patreon, tell you where to find it and stuff. But I wanted to put that on Patreon. Right now, there's only one tier, just $5 a month. Join the Patreon. There's going to be steep discounts on all the swag that I have on my website. That's going to knock down the price pretty good. And then all kinds of other things as the Patreon grows. So I invite you to check it out. The link is in my website, donutshoppodcast.com, and you can join the Patreon and get in the conversation. All right. So, kind of probably part of the crux in the book,
Mhm.
and like you had said, sort of the reasoning behind the writing of the book. And then we've gone through some of the build up to who you
Mhm.
are. But it's like in an incident that changed everything. Routine arrest, LA County
Mhm.
Fair. So you
Yes, sir.
guys are working LA County Fair. I'm sure there's a mix of all kinds of agencies, or is it one of those things
Mhm.
like it's in our city? This is our circus.
Right. Yeah, our circus, our monkeys. Yeah. So it was in Pomona, but like Laverne bordered, so they did some traffic up on the north end and stuff like that. But most of the time, it was ours to run.
Okay.
So, and they contracted with us every year. And it was always in September, so it's like 100+ degrees every day. It's hot as hell, but it was nice because you got overtime money out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the backside or the bad side of that is it was extremely busy, especially like they would have like dollar night and stuff like that would attract nothing but knuckleheads.
Yeah.
The family of five and their baby stroller, they're not going on dollar night. Okay, it's all the idiots from town come up there and cause nothing but problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the Fairplex, they do their best to not overserve people, but people still get drunk and overserved. And nobody's ever happy going to jail. So that just creates a negative stigma that we have to deal with as cops. You know what I mean? Especially working at the fair. But Yeah, that night, you want to talk about the night of
Sure.
the
Yeah.
incident? Sure. So I just pick up an overtime shift. I had worked training during the day at the training division during the day. It was a 6-hour shift at nighttime, working in the carnival area, which the carnival area is, just a small portion of the fair, but it's where 90% of the stuff goes down is in the carnival area, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's 6 hours working with a guy named Prince Hutchinson that night. I had worked with Prince before, but not extensively. We're like partners, quote unquote. And so we just work 10/8. It's a Wednesday night. We're walking around footbeat, working in the fair. It's coming around. It's 10 o'clock. Both of us been at it for, an 18-hour day. And then two of our cops, put out that they're out with a 415, which is like a disorderly subject or whatever, a fight. If you guys, I don't know what codes you guys use, but anyway, and they said, send me a couple units. In our city, we don't have, we don't call for help. You know what I mean? Like when you call for help and I get there and you don't need help, you're going to piss me off. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
when we
All right.
called for help, we needed help. That's just the way it was in Pomona because we didn't have a lot of cops, man. I mean, there was some nights where there was 5 cops on the street, 5,
Wow.
you know what I mean? So you had to handle business, you know what I mean? You had to get it done and you just didn't have all these cops wandering around doing nothing. So
Oh,
anyway,
okay. Yeah,
they
that
call.
makes sense. I mean, my city, as
Yeah.
you described it, is
Mhm.
very similar. But I
Mhm.
mean, for patrol, like, on a bad day, we're running 13. So, for the same type of city. So yeah, I mean, 5
You
is
know,
whew.
I mean, that's 5 o'clock, like after, 1:30 in the morning. From 1:30 to 6:30 in the morning, there's 5 cops in our city,
Wow.
sometimes 6. But you have your cover shift there. So you got probably a dozen, better than a dozen
Okay.
cops, during swing shift times. But so in this particular night, he puts out that, we're out with this 415. We roll over there. As soon as we get there, we realize they're handcuffing 2 adult males, big guys. They're like 6 foot tall, you know what I mean? So not a big problem with them as far as getting them into custody. But our portion was keeping the crowd back, because as soon as 2 idiots start calling off and cackling and talking or yelling and screaming, it attracts a crowd. So
Yeah.
crowd forms around. We're there just to provide rear security. So Prince and I take up rear security. Our 2 cops are escorting the 2 bad guys northbound, worry about watching their backs. We tell everybody to back off. Everybody backs off except one guy, right? The one guy.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
breezes right by me. I reach out to grab him. Nah, man, I'm going up front. And so I reach out again, take a hold of him. And at this point, you have a decision you're going to make in your mind. It's 10 o'clock at night. You've been up for 18 hours. Do you just want to like calm this guy down and like gingerly, like, hey, man, relax. You know what I mean? Your old man's going to be out in 6 hours with a citation. Just relax. That's all I wanted to do. So as I'm doing this, he's resistant, but he's not combative, right? He's just kind of like not wanting to go with the program, but he's not swinging, pushing, or pulling or anything. He's just overall just being a turd. So not a big deal. I'm dealing with him, and I just wanted to go to check his waist for weapons just real quick before I kick him loose and let him go because they're still not at the station yet. So as I do that, boom, he spins around, we spin around, and he grabs a hold of me, man. Like grabs a hold of right here, like grabs a handful. And and as a cop, when somebody grabs you, that's a different story. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
times out of 10, people are trying to get away from you, right? You're grabbing onto somebody and they're pulling away, trying to leave. But when somebody's grabbing you and pulling you in, that's a completely different emotion, So when he grabs a hold of me, I have a hold of him like this. So I take a forearm in my brain. It's funny because you have these things in your mind that go, don't punch him. Don't punch
Yeah.
him. It would look bad. It's like a baton, right? Don't use a baton, dude. They're next to worthless, and all they do is look bad. You know what I mean? Same
Yeah.
thing with punching people. It hurts your hand, and it just makes you look bad, right? So I take a cross check, boom, right to the upper solar plexus. He doesn't let go. He pulls me further towards him, and that's what's on the cover of the book. Is you see he's got a hold of me, and I'm coming over like this because he's pulling me down. So I rear back and do another one right on his solar plexus. My partner comes in, wraps him up, takes him down to the ground. No injuries, right? So no injuries. Hey, everything's going to be all right. There was a guy that came in as Prince is taking him down, cracks him in the foot with a baton, right?
Yeah.
That just doesn't hurt him, hits him on the sole of his shoe, like underneath, right? like right on the rubber sole of his shoe. So it doesn't do any damage, doesn't hurt him. You can hear it, but it didn't do any damage to him. So, but because that baton was there, he had to go to the hospital to get for use of force, right? Because it was a baton use. Even though it didn't do anything, didn't hurt anybody, still had to go to the hospital. So they go, site release this kid, blow and blue. 6 months later, we end up going to court. Turns out he's a juvenile, right? So he's 16, but he's 5'7", 5'8", 200 pounds. Okay, he's not like a fourth grade kid. You know, when I looked at him, I figured he'd probably be, 18, 20, 22 years old, maybe. Yeah. So I go to court 6 months later. I don't have a perfect recollection of what happened because things like that, Justin, they happen in the LA County Fair nightly.
Those right. Yeah, it may have been the third one of the night for you.
Oh, there's some weekends we fill up, our drunk tank holds 40 bodies. We put 40 drunkards in the tank, and not one of them's like, all right, man, I'll go to jail. You got me. No, everyone is either some type of fight or some type of resistance. So anyway, this is not even a 4 on the radar of 1 to 10. Okay, nothing, because there's no injuries. So I go 6 months later, testify at the juvie trial for the 148. Judge ends up dismissing it, right? Because I'm testifying from a recollection, not from your report, right? Because it's the same way with you guys, right? You don't testify from your report, you testify from your recollection.
Yeah. You right? Might get a copy of it beforehand, read it to refresh your recollection.
There you go.
You're not sitting there reading word for word, for sure. Yeah.
Bingo. 100%. So I'm not really, I thought it was his right hand for some reason that night, but turns out on the video, of course, somebody was taking video of it, and the video shows it's actually his left hand that goes by my face, right? Mm-hmm. So, well then, okay, well, were you lying then or are you lying now? It's this classic one. And I'm like, listen, man, this is a low level nothing, dude. You can dismiss this right now. I do not care. So I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. So judge ends up dismisses it. He goes his way. I go my way, thinking that's completely the end of it. 6 months later, I get notified that the FBI is investigating my case. What's you talking about? The FBI? Like the FBI? Yeah. Okay. So they go along.
Like what year? So like what year was the arrest? And then
this happened in 2015, right? 15. And in late 2016, I get notified that they're doing an investigation. So this is probably a year after the incident. I'm getting notified that they're starting an investigation.
Because now internally, so the person was like, I'll just kind of recap it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the person was arrested. Mm-hmm. Like you guys got physical with them. That was always my thing. If I put my hands on somebody, you're going to jail, even if it's a little ticky-tack arrest. Yep. So the person went to jail, happened to probably be the child of the other person that was already being arrested or some relation to them. And then your internal affairs probably looked at it and said, everything's to policy.
Yep.
We don't have any criminal violations observed on the party of our officer or our department. So that's cleared. And and we know even in 2015 time, especially Southern California, I'm sure IA was still to a fine-tooth comb where they're not covering up that you might see on the news and stuff like that. I think, California, Southern California was probably a spearhead in correcting police corruption. And I'm kind of putting that in like a CNN quotes, to say that there was corruption, but, it probably happened faster in California than it did in many other states, even Florida to be included. So,
right. Well, I mean, but we're our own worst enemies. Most of the problems that we have are self-imposed, right? Yeah. Whether it's the Rodney King deal, whether it's Rafael Perez, right? LAPD with all that, that's where the internal affairs mechanism really needed to be re-examined, right?
Okay.
But you're right. My internal affairs investigation come back. Everything's above board. Everything appears within policy. They have the video from the night of the incident. Everything gets reviewed. We also do what's called an admin insight, right? Which is in addition to our internal affairs. So there's 2 basic internal affairs investigations that occur. Both of them came back above board, right? No problems. Then we get notified within the year after that incident, we get notified by the feds that they're doing an investigation. So my internal affairs investigation gets told, right? Meaning that it stops. We're not going to close it because there's a federal investigation going, and there may be information gleaned out of the federal investigation that we have to address in our internal investigation, right? So everything gets paused, right? So the FBI takes another year, a year and a half, 18 months of investigation. You'd think they're investigating frickin' Watergate, man. You know what I mean? It's completely ridiculous. I get all these stories. Probably 20 or 30 cops ended up going down from my department, sitting down with the FBI, sitting down with the grand jury. I'm like, whoa, grand jury, this is like kind of getting serious. And they're like, yeah, they come back. Yeah, they're asking me all these questions, this and that, what happened, blah, blah. Okay, all right, well, all right, whatever. FBI calls me and says, hey, we would like to sit down and talk to you. I'm like, friggin' okay, dude, I got nothing to hide. I didn't even take a rep to my internal affairs investigation. That's how this was a nothing, you know? So I call my attorney. My attorney says, no, do not talk to the feds. The feds are not your friends. You do not understand the way the DOJ and the FBI work. So I'm like, okay. So finally, we do that, you know, sorry, we're not, with no comment, respectfully, we're not going to give any statement. And then everything just kind of goes away. I'm thinking, man, okay, I guess it just kind of fizzled out and popped, right? And thinking everything's going away. So here we are, October of 2017 now, a year and a half later. And mind you, I'm working all this time. I'm uninterrupted. I'm working at the fair. I'm working my normal shift, working overtime shifts, whatever. And then I get a call from my attorney. Hey, you know, they indicted you.
Jeez.
What? And then you're like, I hear what you're saying. I understand English. I know the words you're saying, but it's not computing that I get indicted. So he's like, yeah, you know, you got to go tomorrow, turn yourself in at the Roy Ball Federal Building downtown, and you're going to be fingerprinted, you know, and booked, you know, and you're going to be arraigned in federal court.
Oh my
God. He said, this will be the worst day of your life, period, hands down. And I'm thinking that, have you ever had to arrest a cop before?
No.
Yeah, I unfortunately had to arrest a cop from one of our neighboring agencies for a DUI TC one night. And it was unfortunate. He kind of fled the scene and he tied my hands. I had to do it. Right. But you show as much reverence and respect for it because you know this guy's life's changing. You know what I mean?
Of course,
and I was expecting that when I got to the FBI, to the federal building. You know, my attorney walks me over, and here is, you know, 2 of the 3 Charlie's Angels there, right? These 2 female agents, each were 100 pounds soaking wet, okay, with the power suits, you know, and their flats. And they pull me, and they says, you know, it's going to be, they wave over their Ken doll counterparts, you know, 2 guys come over with their little skinny suits with shoes with no socks. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
I'm not even kidding you, man. This is,
no way.
It was so
straight up fashion show.
Oh my gosh, brother. I mean, but it's downtown LA. You know, what do you want, man? That's
They're trying to market the next career, which is TV relations on a NCIS TV show, FBI LA. Like I can consult. Okay,
everything's an audition, man. You never know who's watching. So, and I don't know if you have any experience with FBI agents working different task force and stuff like that. Over my 20 years of working, every single FBI agent that I came in contact with, I was obviously never a cop, never drove a black and white, never went to any, you know, domestic violence calls or fight calls, or never fought with anybody. They just graduated from Cal State Dominguez Hills, you know what I mean, with their degree in criminology and have 0 life experience. You know what I mean? So everyone is like, man, okay, I understand you have a federal badge and that's really a cute little thing, but that's about all I'm going to deal with you, man. So anyway, go there, handcuff me behind my back, take me back. I ended up getting booked. There's a whole, I mean, obviously I really go into depth in my book about the whole process and how absolutely humiliating and demeaning it was to be arrested, searched out, you know what I mean? And, you know, there was little glimmers of good guys here and there that came in to the story, like the Marshal Service. You know what I mean? They were good dudes, man. You can tell that, you know, they weren't fake tough like these FBI guys were, you know? And so, but anyway, man, we got arraigned, you know, then my wife had to sign a bond for me. My wife had to bail me out, and I'm thinking to myself, how the hell did I end up here, man? And it was so scary and so crazy, but we end up, probably that was in October of 17, November of 18. So a year later, we go to federal trial. Okay. And this is a federal jury trial. And again, big, huge story in this book. And one of the things that I really talk about in my book is, have you ever been on like admin leave?
No, just light duty for injuries, but no actual admin leave. I've known plenty of friends that have been tied up in different stuff. So I know
and admin leave is like, you're on an island, dude. Nobody talks to you, right? Like, so even if it's, and what's crazy is I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, there's been things I've done wrong in my career where I've made a poor decision, and I'm taking some time on the beach or whatever. Hey man, I'll take it standing up. I did it. Absolutely. I shouldn't have said that. That's me. You know what I mean? I own it. But this, man, I didn't do anything wrong. And it just, when you're going after a 20-year career and you are going to be on an island, nobody calls you, nobody talks to you, and you're used to that constant dopamine hit work at every day, right? Like every day you're used to, like when you come in and you're in briefing or whatever, you're hearing some story about what happened last night or that pursuit that was crazy, man. Did you see that? Yeah, XYZ. Or there's always some type of personnel issue where, somebody's getting in trouble because of this or that. So there's that you get that hit, I call it. Like it truly is a dopamine hit, right? It's like scrolling your Instagram looking for the crash, the TC or whatever. But
that's our work every day is Instagram, basically.
And you're used to that every single day. And then when everything goes quiet and stops, your brain doesn't stop. You know what I mean? And that's a huge part in this book. So I ended up buying a horse. You know what I mean? Okay. Because and it just, he saved my life, man. He's still out there on the back 30 right now. You know what I mean? But
cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was another chapter in my book, is where I just had to, it was called, Goats, Horses, and Depression, because it was a big deal when you get put on admin leave, and especially like when it's a year and a half long admin leave. It's crazy. It really, it's a mind screw. You know what I mean? And if you don't have a very strong relationship with your wife and with yourself, there's a high probability you won't make it. You know what I mean? So anyway, we ended up going
I had a friend who was on a very serious admin leave, and he would tell me, for better or for worse, like you said, it goes quiet. And I can tell you from the other side of the fence, people are always like, oh my God, if I call him, they're probably wiretapped on his phone and they're going to be listening to us. How do I communicate? Then if it's like, hey, I get him a message that says, meet me at Starbucks. Then is there going to be a car out there watching us? And it could be for the simplest of things, like the guy may have fibbed in a police report and he's on admin duty. So my buddy was, really wrapped up into it. And he's the only one that I've really ever been like tied into. And so I tied into him where I helped him out. I gave him a place to stay. I gave him, I talked to him all the time. I needed to run up to Orlando. He'd jump in the car with me and run to Orlando with me or something like that. But he'd tell me, and you can probably speak to this too. He'd say, Jay, I feel like they are saying in the office they'd be better off if I just off myself. If I just took my own life right now, it would make their investigation that much easier. He goes, I ain't fucking leaving. I'm not fucking doing it. It's like, I am going to sit here and fight it to the end. And it's a scary time. It's a scary time, I'm sure, to live it. I've already said I didn't for me, thankfully, but I know a good friend that did. And I'm sure, you can agree that they, and it's not so much your department at this point. It's the freaking FBI. Holy crap. It's the feds.
For
they're
sure.
The ones that want me out.
Yeah. And rightfully so, people were scared because I mean, they're taking cell phones, right? Like, anything you talk about work stuff on your phone is now, discoverable. So
Right.
they're taking text messages from people and stuff like that. I mean, there was a handful. There was probably 3 or 4 guys that, like my academy buddy, he would call from his wife's phone to my wife's phone, right? And then we could talk, but, or like we had another guy, Pat O'Malley, he was an old sergeant of mine. He would call my wife's phone and then we'd go meet somewhere. You know what I mean? But again,
Yeah.
you felt like you were doing something wrong because
Right.
we're just meeting, but that was a huge portion of it. And I really kind of go into detail in the book. But back to the trial portion, we end up going to a federal trial. And if you've ever been to a federal courthouse, I mean, they're big and cold, man. And we go in there, they're doing jury selection. And your case, truthfully, is won or lost in jury selection, 100%, especially if you're anywhere outside of the Bible Belt. That's the truth. If you're on the West Coast or East Coast, like where you're at, you get a bad jury, or you even get a bad jury foreperson, you are absolutely going into the game with 2 strikes against you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you put on top of that the federal judge that's presiding over your case, right? He's a third arm of the prosecution. He's already made his
Decision.
opinions have been documented. And what was crazy is that my use of force expert, right? Like when you've gone to trial, you had a use of force expert. Like if you've gone to a big jury trial, that's, for something major, they'll provide a use of force expert. So you don't, because, I have a 5th Amendment right that says I don't have to go up there and testify against myself. So you bring in a use of force expert that says, hey, this was the situation. This is what the police are allowed to do. This is what happens if they do what they do. This is what happens if they don't do what they do. Right. That's what a defense expert does. And I don't want to say it dumbs it down, but it makes it, he puts the information in a very palatable form for your average juror. Right. To juror could then go, oh, now I understand. I thought they could just shoot him in the kneecap or something.
Yeah, exactly.
No, ma'am, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? So, because believe it or not, that's the way these people think. You know what I mean? They do. Because especially with the media, Los Angeles County, this is all Obama leftovers. You know what I mean? Right here. So, we get into this, the first trial, and we think that we're on defense. We're just like, hey, man, look at the evidence, people. The feds come in there. They flew a guy in here from Washington, D.C., who is a civil rights expert, right? Because that was my main charge, was deprivation of civil rights, which carries a no less than 20-year sentence if you're convicted. And, and Fed time isn't like state time. Fed time, you're doing 80%, right? There's no good time, work time. You know what I mean? Like in California at that time, if you got sentenced to state prison in California, you were doing 1 of 10. You know what I mean? 10% time. Because overcrowding,
and it's not like
that,
you've got a John Gotti to give up or something like that you're working deals. You're working on some trumped up bullshit that they, civil rights, not to say that civil rights is bad in America, but it's like in this situation, it's like, come on, guys.
Stupid. It was so drummed up, and they just twisted a narrative. Like they took all of my state testimony when I went and testified for the 148 against the kid, and that case ended up getting dismissed. They took and redacted 80 to 90% redaction of all my testimony, right? So they bring in redacted testimony that twists the narrative, right? To where, sure, you can indict a ham sandwich. Isn't that what the saying goes, right?
Yeah,
so, and that's what they were doing.
Like Epstein files. You redact everything that doesn't say Trump was on island. It's like the only thing that's like left over, and it's like, here's the file.
There it is. And so that's what I couldn't understand, is that how on earth can they redact all this testimony from a state trial? How can they redact all that, but yet not bring in the unredacted copy, right? To me, if you're a jury, or if you're a juror, you are the trier of truth, right? You are the ultimate person that's declaring whether or not I'm going to go to prison, right? So my freedom is on the line. You as a juror should have all of that information, okay? But no, the federal system doesn't work like that. They oh my gosh, that's insane. They can say and spin whatever they want. And the only way that I could get in the unredacted versions of that testimony is if I went and testified.
I was thinking it
Yeah,
in my head.
that's
I
all
was
we need.
like, it's just that's part of their way or part of their tactic
100%.
to
Yeah.
get you to break your Fifth Amendment right
Yeah.
of testifying against yourself or
Mhm.
testifying for yourself or speaking in your own
Yeah.
trial. And so yeah, so they because that's what your testimony is, and if it's all redacted,
Mhm.
it's like, yo,
Yep.
that's not what I said,
Yeah,
you
'cause
know, or I said more.
yeah, or I did, and that was what was crazy is that, in the state trial, I was like, "Well, did he spin or did you spin?" Like, I don't know, it's just our movement together, we spun, you know? So he didn't, like, spin you, no, and then redaction, the whole thing, but they got the word "no," right? And
Right.
that's all they
They got
need.
your answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
They got the
so
answer they wanted to use. Yeah.
100%. And in the first trial, dude, this freaking I had the most liberal, nasty jury ever. Come to find out, so they do our defense rests at the first trial. The jury comes back a day later, hopelessly deadlocked.
Oh,
Oh man, dude. Okay. Judge says, I don't care if you're deadlocked. Get your butts back in there and get me a verdict.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Another day goes by. They come back, still hopelessly deadlocked. Okay. So they come up, they read the verdict. Yeah, deadlock, blah, 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 11-1. I'm like, okay, cool. So there was just one guy that just wanted me guilty, right? So I had one bad juror, I guess, right? Right.
Yeah.
So no, they pulled the jury. It's the exact opposite.
Oh,
It was 11-1 for guilty. I
oh,
had one lone holdout juror.
wow.
Crazy. And there was a whole long story about that guy. Yeah, I mean, he was in the jury box. You could tell who he was, but
Mhm.
it just you got to read the book, man. It's a good story
Yeah.
because we'd be here 6 hours, bro. I tell
No,
you this
no,
whole
of
thing.
course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
This is definitely an advertisement for it or a gloss over so that we can,
right,
so that people know to read it. And we, and
it's
then like you said,
good,
we can't
man.
take a 6-hour podcast
Yeah, and
for sure.
so after that 11-1, obviously the feds refile immediately,
Yeah.
right? So all of my pretrial probation extends. Then we go back to trial in January of 2019. Again, look at that. This is 5 years later. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Just now getting to the second trial, and then we go on offense then, and that's when we're going after the FBI. You know what I mean? We're going
Uh-huh.
after their investigation because it was completely fraudulent. The indictment was completely fraudulent.
Yeah.
When the FBI and the DOJ took my original case to the grand jury, right? The grand jury takes a month of reviewing the case, all the documents, hundreds of pages of documents. They interviewed over 40 people, right? Witnesses, involved parties, etc. They do all that. They come back, no indictment. Original, okay?
Mhm.
Original grand jury, no indictment. Well, the DOJ goes, well, we'll just impanel another grand jury. Okay. Wow. Something like double
Yeah.
jeopardy or something like that. It rings a
Yeah.
bell to me, but they just go, no, we'll just impanel another grand jury. So they impanel another grand jury. They send one lone FBI agent to go in and speak for 2 hours to the grand jury. No witnesses, no
Yeah.
documents, no nothing. She goes up, and obviously there's no defense in a grand jury, right?
Yep.
She just goes in, she spins this whimsical tale, right? Craziness, Lucky Charms, and leprechauns, and all kinds of craziness to this grand jury. 20 minutes later, grand jury comes back indictment.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves of
Mhm,
dealing with the media and
mhm.
being kind of part of the media here with
Yeah.
this podcasting stuff and having been a PIO is the constant the word indictment to so many
Oh.
people, the layman's of the world, which is
Mhm,
90% of America.
mhm.
When they hear indictment, they think guilty,
Yeah.
but they don't hear the
Mhm,
side of the story that, like you
mhm.
just said, when it's only prosecution that gets to
Yep.
present the argument, because all
Mhm.
they're really doing is almost even less than us with a probable cause
Oh, yeah.
affidavit,
No.
where we say at least this person with evidence committed this,
Mhm,
we believe
mhm,
reasonably believe this person committed evidence to this
mhm,
statute, and this is why they're being arrested. They go in
mhm.
with even less sometimes, and they just paint this story, and there's no one to discredit, no
Mhm.
defense to discredit,
Correct.
and all it is just to
100%.
say
Yes.
that this person deserves a trial. They need to go
Mhm.
to trial,
Yep.
but the news puts it out as, Chad Jensen got indicted.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
then you're watching it while cooking dinner
Mhm.
or while eating
Mhm.
dinner, and then they move on
And
to the
then
next story, and you're
mhm.
like, "Oh, guilty. Okay,
Yeah.
cool." and frustrating.
Same thing, man. I would think the same thing, to be honest with you. They indict these high level folks in Washington, D.C. or whatever you see on the news. The indictment has like this aura of guilt about it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Without even having gone to trial, but one little
Yeah.
quick story about the FBI and why I did not go sit down with them and interview with them. Right.
Yeah.
Because my attorney explains to me that the FBI does not video or audio record interviews, period.
Hmm.
And you're not entitled to legal representation when you sit down with the FBI. Did you know that?
No.
Isn't that insane? Dude, you get called to Walmart for a shoplifter, right? You have to video and audio record A, your interaction with them, B, any Miranda statement that you get. You have to have
Yeah.
video and audio recorded, right? We
Yeah.
do, you know?
Yeah.
So how is it in 21st century America, the FBI can call you in and they do not audio, video, and they do not allow you to audio or video. So you cannot have legal representation and you cannot audio and video or videotape your interview for one simple reason, because they control the narrative, right? So
Yeah.
they go in there, and again, one agent, and this all comes out in the trial. We had this whole half a day about the FBI educated us as to how the interview process goes with the FBI. And the average American has no idea. Okay.
Wow.
So when you go sit down with the FBI, there's one agent that asks the questions, there's one agent that takes the notes, and there's one agent that writes the report from the notes that agent asks the questions of, right?
Mhm.
Do you know why they do that?
No.
This right here.
Oh,
Well, that's what I understood. Oh, that's what you meant. Oh, you know why? Plausible deniability.
plausible deniability.
Absolutely. And they control the narrative. One
Yeah.
little thing, one more point, I won't belabor it, but one point that came up in our trial, we finally got the notes, like the handwritten notes from that agent that did the interview of two witnesses that were there the night of the incident, right?
Uh-huh.
These two witnesses were the brother and the cousin of the suspect, okay? We didn't know in the first trial that these two forms even existed, that they had interviewed anybody, because
Yeah.
they didn't. The prosecutor did not provide us with discovery, right?
Yeah.
They did, but on the Friday before trial, okay, again, remember they did a 1.5-year investigation? The Friday before trial began, they dropped 30,000 pages of documents.
Oh my God.
And there's 2 302 forms inside that 30,000 pages of documents. And do you know why they did that? Because they knew we wouldn't find it. Well,
Yeah.
we gave it to you. We provided you discovery, right? But they hid it in 30,000 pages of alcohol receipts and credit card statements from everybody that was at the fair that day.
This just sounds like last season of The Lincoln Lawyer. It's like,
Isn't it
basically like
crazy?
that
Yes.
same sort of thing. He was up against the FBI.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's oh my God, that's crazy.
And they do that. So we end up subpoenaing the notes for these 302 interviews. And on one of the interviews, it says OBS interfere W arrest, right? Which would layman's terms is observed, interfere with arrest. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the purpose of me contacting him, because they were about to interfere with the arrest, right? So their whole contention was that, oh, I never had any legal justification to lay my hands on this kid or talk to him because he wasn't a threat. Well, that's funny. We have a note here that says that you interviewed the cousin who was standing right next to him, and the cousin said he observed him interfering with the arrest, which is called exculpatory evidence. Yeah.
That's something that I kind of like didn't even ask you. And their whole reason for the civil rights violation was that essentially they painted a picture that you just grabbed a kid, yoked him up, and threw him in jail because he was just standing around. Maybe didn't walk away on the first, like, hey man, take off.
Yeah,
and then you just went, whoa.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, they were saying that their tail that they twisted, there was 2 of them. The first tail that they twisted was that one of my explorers, because I was working at training at the time and I was an explorer advisor, one of our explorers went to school with this knucklehead and had gotten into a fight with him at school and said that my explorer advisor is going to beat you up at the fair one day.
Oh my God.
How stupid. So they go up to the high school, they interview all 30 kids in that class. All 30 kids in the class go, these 2 don't even talk. No, that's that's ludicrous. That's nothing there. So they waste 6 months going down that rabbit hole, right?
Wow.
So then they came up with the fact that they said that the backs of the officers are walking this way, right? They're saying that the kid never got within 100 feet of the backs of the officers. And I was like, no, we're talking, if I didn't do anything, I was the last person. And if they get on the other side of me, there's nobody stopping them to get to them. So I have to have their backs, right? So they're saying, no, that I lied about that. The kid was 100 feet away, blah, blah, blah. He was never a threat. I just wanted to teach the kid a lesson because he was videotaping the cops. Right.
Yeah.
But if we spin that narrative hard enough and we redact all these reports, right? And then what's crazy is, my partner, Prince, the guy that came in and wrapped him up that night and took him away from me, he gets indicted. So they say that I made Prince, I coerced Prince into writing a fraudulent report. They have no evidence of that, none whatsoever. Yeah. And in fact, 2 weeks before the first trial, they called Prince's attorney and said, hey, we want to sit down and offer your guy a deal. Okay, right. What's the deal? Oh, this is the deal. You're looking at 40 years in prison, Prince, right, for deprivation of civil rights, right, and lying in a police report. So that's all. You're looking at 40 years of federal prison if you get found guilty. The judge will absolutely throw the book at you because he hates you. So you might want to think about this deal we're about to offer you. We are offering you 18 months probation. All you have to do, we just need you to sign this report that we've prepared for you that says that Corporal Jensen made you and coerced you into writing a false report, and that Jensen was out of control and lost his temper and just took it out on this poor kid. That's all you got to do is sign that. 18 months probation, you're on your own. You know what?
With no job, basically, at that point,
too. Yeah, of course. You know what I mean? But regardless, I mean, you talk about stones, dude. Look at that stones. For Prince to say, hey, that's not what happened. I'm not taking that deal. I'm going to trial. You know what I mean? Yeah, Prince didn't owe me anything. He's not, he's nobody to me other than we were partners that night. But for him to do that was absolutely, I mean, I get emotional about it, that he had the guts, because this is the FBI, man, the DOJ. When it says Chad Jensen v. the United States of America, that's insane. You know what I mean? And for him to go in there and push that deal off the table and say, no, I'm not taking the deal because that's not what happened. You know what I mean? But that didn't stop the DOJ. It didn't stop the FBI. They still went in there and spun this ridiculous tale. You know what I mean? And tried to put us in prison, And we haven't even gotten to the portion where they indicted our internal affairs sergeant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a whole nother.
Yeah, a whole nother ball of wax. That's crazy.
It's insane, man.
They just what's in the cup? Guys, what's in my cup? Blackout Coffee Company. We joined up with them. I've been drinking it and I enjoy it. And I think you may enjoy it as well. So you can go over to our website and click the link, or you can just go to their website, blackoutcoffee.com, and use our coupon code to get 10% off. The code is DSP10. So go over, check it out. Had it out and just really wanted to,
yes, sir,
and just really wanted to go after you guys. I wonder what the ratio, what the amount, if somebody could look at what the amount of this same style going across the United States in that period of time, if there was almost like an across the board memorandum that said we need to utilize this method to clean up the streets of police work, or something like that.
I got one for you. Okay. So the feds, the DOJ, has a 96% conviction rate. 96. Okay. Your DA in the county where you live maybe has a 50 to 60% conviction rate.
Yeah.
That's high. Sometimes it's as low as in the 40s. Like in California, forget about it. You're in the low 40s, right? Mm-hmm. The DOJ has a 96% conviction rate. You know why? Because they will outspend you and they will out-resource you. My defense cost well over $1 million. And if I didn't have insurance for that through our legal defense fund, in our association, there'd be no way I could have done that. I would have had to take a plea deal, right?
Right. And then to
Yeah.
that number there, and from what you've already demonstrated, they're willing to, basically, I don't want to say lie, but cheat and steal
No, my friend,
across.
they lied.
Yeah.
100% lied. You'll
Oh
call it
crap.
what
I'm
it
getting
is.
tapped.
You
I
know what
can
I
already
mean?
hear them. They just
No,
knocked on my door.
oh, dude. When you
But yeah,
answered my
lie.
phone call, you're already on
Yeah.
the list, pal.
Yeah, lie, cheat, and steal. Hey, man, First Amendment. I'm part of the media now.
Yeah, there
I'm
you
just a
go.
journalist.
Uh-huh.
Lie, cheat, and steal to
Mhm.
get their wins, and then
Yes,
they're
sir.
using, sometimes funny music or funny,
Mhm.
funny math. There you go. That was the word. The
Yep.
math.
Fuzzy math,
They're
fuzzy
using funny
math.
math
Mhm.
to get
Mhm.
it created, to
Yes.
get those convictions for sure.
Yeah.
And then they're using, like with Prince, they're
Mhm.
using, um, uh, and they consider those wins when somebody
Mhm.
pleads out to that
Yes,
and
sir.
uses the rationale, like you said. Oh
Mhm.
shit, this is the feds, bro. Like,
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't even know if I know what Jensen did totally.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
sign that. And then what he
Mhm.
does by signing that is
Yeah.
by signing yours, basically, because now they just go, hey,
Like,
jury,
yeah.
his
Here it is.
partner, the
Yeah.
person entrusted for his safety, just
Yeah.
said that he,
Yeah.
so, and
Mhm.
then now they just got a two, they
Yep.
just got two wins.
And
So,
then real
great
quick
on him. Big on him.
footnote on that. What's
Yeah.
crazy is we come to find out later that yes, the DOJ has the ability to make that offer, but do you
Yeah.
know who makes the final stand as to whether or not he gets the deal?
No, what?
The judge, the federal judge, right? Judge hated us. What's sad is a lesser man maybe had taken that deal, right? Just to save his own skin, right? And then you sell your soul for 30 pieces of silver, right?
Yeah.
And then you go before the judge and the judge goes, "Oh, that's entertaining. You're still
Yeah.
going 30 years federal max with Chad." You know what I mean?
Wow.
And
Or
that
the
was
judge just says, hey, you need to
100%.
go for trial and we need to put all this evidence out on the table,
Yep.
or something like that too, if they're
Mhm.
more for it. So, all right, let me run another break real quick, and
Okay.
then let's kind of talk to you about the bigger message, and then the fact that, that life didn't necessarily get better from there, with this, and then we'll
Come
get
on.
right. Which one do I want to run? I'll run this one. Hey, come here. Come here. No, bring it in real close. I got something for you. Did you subscribe yet? Right down there. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, because you got to know when we're going to give you a show. Do it. Go now. Go now. I'm waiting. Come on. Right there. All right, back to the show. All right, so yeah. Yeah, that was back in the early days of this podcast. We were just trying to figure out like commercials to cut up and write, and I was like, well,
Mhm.
we could make a subscribe commercial and do something silly. But yeah, so, you know, not moral of that part of the story
Sure.
is, the second trial, you guys go on offense.
Mhm. Yes.
You beat up and destroy as much of their, um, you know, reasonable, beyond a reasonable doubt. You create reasonable doubt,
100%. Mhm.
by destroying their case as best you can, especially with that interview of the cousin witness.
Mhm.
So yeah, how's that end up? And then kind of why doesn't it get better?
Well, that's man, it does. It gets better, right? Because I'm not
Yeah.
in federal prison. So
Hell yeah.
that's a win. Okay, we take that.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is, okay, you come back 12-0, not guilty, exonerated, blah, 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 blah. Judge bolts up, exits the courtroom.
Oh
And
man.
he was pissed too. When he read that verdict, he was pissed. You know what I
Wow.
mean? He was very upset. So what made me mad was there's no recourse, man. There's no recourse. We have just been able to completely demonstrate that the agent lied to gain an indictment on me. She lied. The measurements were incorrect. When Quantico, Virginia told her, Agent X, that information is categorically false. You have to correct it. She never went back to the grand jury and corrected it. Okay. Okay. So it went from, 90 feet to 30 feet. That's a huge discrepancy. She never went back and fixed that. She just let it fly. So it's just insane that there's no recourse for me or you. You can't. My partner, my co-defendant, Mike Niederbaumer, who also got indicted, He was exonerated. He goes to file suit against the FBI agents, right, for malicious prosecution, which, hey, that sounds sexy, right? Okay, you know who you send that to? The Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. You know what he goes with it? He goes, oh, that's entertaining. Yeah, no, we don't see it that way. And it's just like, what are you going to do? Nothing. It's just like the saying that my attorney told me in court. Do you know the difference between God and a federal judge?
What was that?
God is not a federal judge. Okay. There's one person that hires and fires a federal judge. That's the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. That's power. That's freaking power, man. You know what I mean? And it is oftentimes abused, so, and you said,
unless you're I'm saying it, you're not, but a protected class or can make waves. No one is going to look at you, especially with a blue line flag behind you or a police officer. Woe is me.
I'm in a blue gang. Blue gang.
If you were able to create a shitstorm with press conferences, protests, all 100%. Kinds of stuff, then perhaps Merrick Garland might take a look at this or entertain it. But unless you've got a president of the United States that's going to go on like a Truth Social and blow this up or something like that, you've got no leg to stand on. And so your attorneys are going to be like, hey, we're going to spin our wheels, I'm sure, and that sort of thing. Lick your wounds and move on, probably is the speech you got.
Yeah. So, and that's what we did, I end up, we get the exoneration, the next, on the way home from the courthouse. I call the internal affairs sergeant at the time, or internal affairs lieutenant at the time. Hey man, did you hear exoneration? Friggin' so happy, man. God is good, dude. I'm so happy, XYZ. He goes, yeah, man, I heard. And you know what? I called the head of internal affairs for Los Angeles County, the guy that he puts on internal affairs school, right? The guy that when you go to IA school, you go to his school. Because, here Pomona PD, we've never had to deal with federal indictment or anything like that. So I called and I asked him, I said, hey, what do we do with these guys? He said that the IA guru said, you get them back to work immediately. You act like this never happened. They were exonerated. That means this never happened. Get them back to work. Right? Sounds
fair. So to bring it back, is your IA still told through all these years? Okay. So it's still active. So let's remind everybody that his internal affairs for the department was told, i.e. the word paused, but it's a special internal affairs word. And so it's paused. So yeah. So what you're saying.
I come back to work, meet the chief on Monday. And he's like, yeah. And I'm fully expecting to go 10-8, man. I'm like, hey, I'm going to sign my admin paperwork. I'm going to get my gun and my badge back and my ID back. And I'm going to go down to the locker. I'm going to change. And I'm going to go out and crush crime. That's what I'm going to do. Right. So no, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Chad, I'm just not ready for you to go back to work, man. I don't want you seen out in public. Oh my God, dude. And at this point, when your expectations and your reality do not marry each other, that's when stress happens, right?
Yeah.
Because these expectations are not being met. And after all of this bull crap that I've just gone through, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a freaking train, right? Coming at me. So this chief's like, nah, I'm just not ready for you to go back to work. You know what? Niederbommer's trial's in April. You know what? Hey, go just park him upstairs, take him up to the DB. Yeah, put him in a corner somewhere. And he can mill around up here. So I did that.
So obviously I wasn't watching the news in LA at the time. Was your face all over? Were you
No, that's another chapter in this book, which it's almost, I'm laughing now, but it's not funny. But you have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, you're going to cry. If you cry, you're going to get pissed, right?
Of course.
So you have to learn. It's just like when you're a cop, you got to learn to laugh shit off, man.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. But this was such a nothing story. The day before the state trial ran, when I was going to appear, in the state trial against this kid, right, that was ultimately dismissed, Channel 4 News runs Channel 4, expose where they show the video from the fair, but it's not the video that I saw, because the video I saw was dark and grainy. This one blew up like freaking midday afternoon, right? It was totally enhanced, blown up, everything. And so they put that on Channel 4 News, and they interview the victim's family and all this ridiculous media garbage, right? Thinking it's going to attract and garner major headlines, right? Like, we got one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
George Floyd Jr. has risen from the dead.
Yeah, we got
know? We got it.
our figurehead for protests.
Oh, this is going to be good. Burp. Crickets, man. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Our city hall, our chief of police, and our city manager never received a single complaint from any person or constituent in Pomona, in the city of Pomona. Not one complaint.
Yeah.
Not one.
Okay.
So
all right, yeah,
they kept trying to run this story.
That clears it up.
Because he was like, oh, it's public perception. They're going to be rioting in the streets. There's nobody rioting in the streets, man. Nobody cared. Nobody literally cared. Channel 4 even went to like Starbucks in the middle of our town, right at Mission and Gary. Go there and they're interviewing people. Hey, watch this video. So they play the video, you know what I mean? The fair video, it's all blown up. And hey, how do you feel about that? And every single one of them goes, well, why didn't he listen to the cop? Yeah. Why didn't he just do what he was told? Well, there's more to the story, because this is all you're showing is when it goes physical. What happened to the 5 minutes prior to that? And it just caught no traction. It was a complete bust, you know? Yeah. And that's why when I went back to work after the trial, and the chief's telling me, I'm not ready for you to go back to work. What are we talking about? You know? And what's neat about California, you probably are the same way in Florida, but like I've noticed here in Texas, there's not a lot of officers' rights here. You know what I mean? Like California, we have what's called POBAR, Peace Officers Bill of Rights, okay, which says that you can't work just and out of class, meaning that your chief can't come to you, pull you off patrol, and go make you move furniture for 3 months. He can't do that. You know what I mean? You have to work something inside of your field in which you were hired for, right? So that's exactly what he did to me and Mike Niederbaumer. We moved furniture for 3 months. You know what I mean? So he's like, yeah, well, I want to have another internal investigation, but I'm not going to go with the one that we did. We're going to hire an outside private eye to come in here and do it. It should take about 6, 9, 12 months. What? Are you kidding me? Because there was this, and he says, well, there might have been something, some new information. I said, with respect, the federal trial gleaned no new information. Everything, our internal affairs investigation had more factual, intelligent information than this fairy tale of a federal investigation had. And you know this. That's what really pissed me off, is that this chief knew it. You know what I mean? But he's sitting here. I firmly believe that the FBI lost. And I think that the FBI told him, don't you dare promote that guy, or don't you dare put him back to work. You know what I mean? So that's what I think personally. But, because I was mad at the FBI and I wanted to sue the FBI, and my attorney says, Chad, I don't think that's a good idea. Count on one hand how many people have beat the FBI, have beat the federal government. In the history since J. Edgar Hoover, there's maybe a handful of dudes that have beat them like you guys just beat them. And they are very vindictive, and they have very deep pockets. Do you want them going through your trash for the rest of your life? Well, then, you know what, Chad? Retire and move to Texas. That was his advice, but, and I kind of understand. That's like, even when writing this book, sad to say, brother, but even writing this book, and I've changed all the names, like all the agent names, the judge name, all the bad guys in my book, so to speak, all their names are changed. They're all pseudonyms or whatever, right? Yeah. Even then, I still feel like I need to sleep with one eye open. You know what I mean? Because the feds, especially nowadays with AI and the ability, dude, they can plant stuff on your computer that remotely that you have no idea, right? That they put it through back channels onto your computer. And that was why it took me a while. And only after, like we talked offline, only after I read Eddie Gallagher's book, did I kind of finally have the guts to say, hey, this story needs to be told. You know what I mean? And that was, it's that part's scary a little bit, but back to, when I get back to work, yeah, the chief put me on ice for 9 months, so, which was
Yeah. And
complete
then how,
horse crap.
and then how long after that did you decide, hey, it's time to pull the plug?
Again, dude, I'm one of those guys that you probably worked with and you go, fucking dude, how can that much shit happen to one fucking, I'm sorry,
Oh,
one
okay.
guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You gotta
yeah.
be kidding me, dude. This guy's cursed. And so I go back to work. Finally, August 5th, I go back to patrol, right? And I'm jazzed, man, back to patrol, dude. And because everybody was like, Chad, just retire, dude. You're 50, just retire, But no, I'm going out on my terms. I'm not having somebody push me out, man. This was my job. This is my passion. So I love this job. And I love Pomona, dude. I love working the city that I worked in. I love that city. You know what I mean? Especially all the community involvement that I had. I loved it. And so I wasn't going to leave, right? I was going to leave when I'm ready. So I go back to work. That's in August. Fast forward past the first of the year, end up going to a different shift on days. I am acting sergeant for like 3 months, right? There's some retirements. The deputy chief puts me in and says, hey, Chad, we need you to go be acting sergeant on this squad. Oh, freaking cool, dude. So
let's go.
as a sergeant, I'm not saying sergeants are lazy. Most of them are not. But what's nice is you're not chasing paper calls, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're chasing your basket back at the station, right? Approving reports, kicking back reports. That's the basket you chase. So I'm like, no problem, man. So I'm up there, I'm sitting there, and it's probably March of 2020. Call goes out, a man with a sword. A sword, right? How
Not
many times you
today.
heard that? I'm like, man with a sword. What the hell? Yeah, man, with injuries. It's on the east side of town. I'm on the west side of town. So nobody's chirping up on the radio. Everybody's 10-6. You know what I mean? So, well, I'm the only unit 10-8. All right. Pomona, show me en route, and I'm driving there, but the suspect has ran away from the victim. So there's no chance of a continuing crime occurring at that particular second. So I'm rolling code 3, but I'm very conscientious of Murphy's Law. So, I'm not looking to get into trouble. I'm driving, I'm clearing intersections. I freaking get there. I see the victim. He's got flicking blood gushing down the side of his head, and I'm like, hey, where's the bad guy? He's right down there. So he points down the street just as you see the bad guy run across the street. Ding, 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 and I'm like, that him? He goes, yeah, that's him. Boom, boom. Get out there, get en route, come around. And while you're driving there, putting it out on the radio, Pomona got him. He's southbound Reservoir from 2nd Street, male Hispanic, black, black sweatshirt, black pants, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? Because you're telling yourself, dude, you just went through some major bullshit right now. Do you want to get wrapped up in this? But, your better judgment, supersedes common sense. Yeah, you got to handle your business. So I go in, swing around, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to corral this guy because other units are coming. So I'm thinking, I'm just going to corral him. I'm not going to get out and chase him. Okay. So just going to corral him in and keep eyes on him. So he goes, and I can see him as I'm passing this way. I look out the passenger window. I can see him trying to jump a cinder block wall. So I'm going to go around to the other side of the cinder block wall. Then cool, he's contained. Right, he'll be in that backyard, no problem. So I turn around, I come bump up in the driveway, and the bushes start moving. He couldn't get over the wall, so he's skirting around the wall, and now he's running right in front of my patrol vehicle inside the bushes, right? So I get out, throw it in park, I get out, stop, motherfucker, you know what I mean? And this, it's not Beverly Hills, you know what I mean? This is Pomona, right? Sometimes you have to speak in a tone where people plainly understand you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't get out like John Candy at Wally World. Sorry, sir.
Sorry,
Wally World's closed. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I get out, and you will not believe it, but this guy jumps out of the bushes right at me, like coming right towards me. And I'm drawn down on him, got a high ready, you know what I mean? Stop, let me see your hands, stop, blah, 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 giving him repeated commands. He pulls this 36-inch freaking samurai sword out of his back pocket and goes like this, and it's coming at me. And you're like, you're again, your body's, you're absorbing what's happening, but it's not computing. And I'm like, sure enough, officer involved shooting occurs, you know what I mean? And unfortunately he passes away, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And, I go back to the station, and a whole other, comedy routine with our command staff with all that crap. And, it's just, here I am
Yeah.
now. What is this? I've been back a year, bud, and
Yeah.
so there they are, at the front of the station with the picket sign. Chad Jensen's a murderer, this. And now my wife's like, kind of like, we're done with this guy.
Yeah.
We're done. We're done. Okay. And I'm thinking, no, babe, I got to go back. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not going to be pushed out, and and she's like, I don't think you should. I think you should retire. I'm like, well, sweetheart, no, I mean, tell you what, next bad thing that happens, I'll leave. Right. So I'm off for a couple of weeks. Chief orders me back to work. Again, in my book, I go to this whole thing about when you're involved in an OIS, there's no timeline on when you're supposed to come back to work. You come back when you're ready. You know what I mean? Wasn't that way here. No, you had 2 weeks, come back to work, or you're burning your own time. Okay, well,
Wow.
I go back to work. I am back to work a week. I get a call again. I'm the SAM unit. Get a call, man with a machete. Okay, banging on people's cars, Fairplex Avenue off ramp, blah blah blah, threatening people with a machete. And I'm driving there, and again, dude, that little guy, the angel on your shoulder and the devil on your shoulder, is telling you, the hell are you doing? No units en route, by the way. We're code 9. Nobody's available, right? So I'm the only one driving to this one too. And so I'm driving there. Thank goodness he's, UTL, he's gone, can't locate him. And then I come back, the watch commander says, hey, 1019, real quick, wants a quick debrief, because then he fled into like LA County Sheriff's area, so they took all that over. No crime, no victim, no nothing. So I go back to the police station, contact watch commander, tell him the story, what's going on. It's kind of a big nothing, you know what I mean? But holy shit, dude, man, what is it, man? I can't catch a break these days. And so I walk out, then I bump into my deputy chief. Boom, bump into him. He's like, hey, Chad, how's it going? Fine, sir. What's up? Hey, I didn't know if you knew this, but the sword guy? Yeah. The one from 2 months ago you got in that shooting with? Yes, sir. What's up? He goes, yeah, I just want to let you know that his family has retained the attorney from your federal trial. The guy, it's just, oh my God. And I tell him, my shooting, this sword guy shooting, it's on YouTube. Like, I'll send you the link, right? Or you can put the link up. But I mean, they did a whole thing. It's crystal clear. My audio, my video, crystal clear. You know what I mean?
Because you got a body cam. That was one of the things I was going to ask during the fair. You didn't have body cam. It doesn't sound like you had body cams at the time, but then in the interim, you guys grew body cameras. So you had it for the shooting.
We would have never been, none of this would have happened if I had a body camera. So after that,
so there's like, not a positive, but there's an argument for body cameras, and we've said it
100%.
before, and they say it when they sell them to you, that 60 to 70% of the body cam footage is there to exonerate from 100%. Ridiculousness.
So, no truer statement has been made, my friend. You know what I mean? That body camera, I am the largest proponent of body cameras you will find. I am a big time supporter. A body camera has never hurt me ever in my career. You know what I mean? So anyway, he says, yeah, he retained this attorney. And I'm like, well, sir, respectfully, I hope this time it goes different than the federal time last time. Because the feds are going to pick this shit up, right? You fucking know they're going to pick it up. Absolutely. Yeah. Another bite at this apple, oh, they're taking it. You know what I mean? So now this is all flushing through my freaking brain at 85 miles an hour. And I tell him, I say, Deputy Chief, I said, with all due respect, my shooting was crystal clear. I mean, everything is right there. There's no other way to put it. It's textbook. This is the way it went down. So I hope that you or the chief will be out on the front steps of the PD here saying, we support our officer. He didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that this happened, but hey, the bad guy made the decision to do this, not the officer,
Yeah.
Oh, Chad, we can't do that. We can't make any statement like that. And I'm like, well, sir, how the hell do the other sheriffs around here, do that? How do the other PD chiefs come out and say, hey, I stand by my cop until you prove to me that he did something wrong. He has my support, right?
Yeah.
Innocent until proven guilty. No, Chad, we can't do that. So that was my last day at work. I walked out into my police car. I got in there, and I had always thought that like panic attacks were like, come on, you freaking pussy. Really? Come on. You know what I mean? Until I had one. You know what I mean? My hands were throbbing. My throat was throbbing. I felt like I was looking through straws. You know what I mean? And I was legit having a complete panic attack. And just by the grace of God, my academy buddy is walking by the back of my patrol unit. He looks in there and he sees me sitting in there. He comes up, bangs on the window. He's like, hey, what's up, man? And I'm like, Bill, I feel really weird right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you're an old man. You should probably go get that checked out. So, he takes me up to the hospital, and then we're at the hospital. My blood pressure is like 165 over 115 or something like that. Some crazy number.
Yeah.
So the nurses are there stripping my freaking uniform and stuff off, telling me I got to chill out like this. And guess who walks in the door? Deputy chief walks in the door at the hospital. Hey, Chad, I just want to make sure it wasn't anything I said that caused this to happen.
Fucking guy, man.
Oh,
Wow.
brother, man. And
yeah, it's 100% what you said.
Exactly.
and it just tossed me into PTSD from the last freaking 5 years of my life.
And so it just was like, at that point, ended up treated, released, go home. My wife's all, you know what? Hey, if you want to go back, you're going to go back a single man, because I'm not going to do this anymore. Yeah. And because it's hard on them too, it's hard on me, but it's hard on her and your kids. You know what I mean? So, but man, that's just, like I said, we could be here 6 hours, brother. It's kind of crazy.
This is supposed to be a teaser for the book. And I think it's a good teaser, especially with deeper dives in the book into, different people's, purposes in the story, or what they felt was their purpose in the story. And so, man, super crazy scenarios. I mean, I really, like, I'm happy at least that you're healthy, in what seems to be a good place.
100%.
And
Yes, sir.
you're able
100%.
to tell this story. You're able to tell the lessons that you've learned, and that you're willing to get out here and talk to everybody, because there's all kinds of audiences through these podcasts. My audiences are first responders and veterans for sure. A lot of times people that are looking to get into the career, and we try to explain to people in some of our multi podcast live streams, or when we get together, we've got different aspects of or different ways of looking at the career. Me, I've got a fairly good outlook on the career, so I can't necessarily look at it through different ways, but you've got a good head on your shoulders, especially going through all of what you've gone through, that you can kind of tell it both sides to everybody, and tell them what the good and the bad for it. And I appreciate you coming on the show and going through all this. Where I'm sure places like Amazon.
Yes.
You have a website to sort of put the book
I'm on
out there
Instagram, Facebook, Badge Under Fire, Fight for Truth, which just basically is the title of the book. And just Badge Under Fire, Fight for Truth. You know what I mean? So it's it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's through Ballast Books. You know what I mean? So it's available everywhere, and on Kindle, and I'm doing the audio version now, which is
that audio is
it's hard.
Audio is, but you're the reader of the audio.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm definitely, because I'm like a podcast guy. I'm an audiobook guy. Especially if I'm like driving to Orlando. I've got a 4-hour trip that I can, pump a book out, or part of a book on a trip. That's definitely a huge way. And if you're doing it yourself, you're able to really get the voice into the scenario. So
Right. Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I
So cool.
will. I'll put all that in the
Mhm.
description for the podcast. And like I
Mhm.
said, I appreciate you. Anything else in closing, or I know we left plenty out, but that's
Oh
for the book.
yeah. No, yeah, of course. I mean, I'd love to come back some other time. You know what I mean? We'll do part two, you know what I mean? And
Cool.
we can really dive into some of this deep stuff. I mean, I didn't even, like you said, we
Yeah,
didn't even cover certain portions of it because just for time. But
of
no, man,
course. Yeah,
I just, like I said, I love the job. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
people, I have no ill will towards my job or what I did. That was the career for me. You know what I mean? I had spent 12 years in the grocery business from 18 to 30 in the grocery business, what I thought was my career. And then I had an opportunity to do this job, and I love this job. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And it was a good job to me. And the one thing that I do appreciate was the guys that I worked with and the girls. I mean, there was some good females that I worked with, and obviously there was some people that weren't good that were involved in this, whole thing, and people that you thought were your true friends.
yeah,
People will disappoint you, man. You know what I mean? But
yep,
you can't take it personal, and you just got to keep stepping. But no, I just, this one thing is, do not make all of your friends cops, right? Because
totally.
it's easy when you first become a cop. You all you do is hang out with all your partners. You guys go do barbecues, each other's houses, and stuff like that. But when I was off on leave, that my neighbors and my friends that are not cops were the ones that kept my skull straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I owe them a great debt of gratitude for that. And of course, my wife, without even saying, she's absolutely my rock.
yeah.
So
That's those are definitely things that I've known for my whole career, and I've
mhm,
and I've maintained that outside force.
mhm.
I point at the Star Wars helmet. That was another whole nother friend group of
Uh-huh.
costume characters that did events, and I would tell people I do it to go to a galaxy far, far away from my normal job. And
Right.
you've got to have the outside outlet, because
Mhm,
God forbid that one day when it all turns on you,
mhm.
there could be a potential for it all to drop real fast. And then
Yeah.
without that support system, like you said,
No.
you know friends and family, you could, if you've pushed them all away, then
Yeah.
you might be on an island. So
100%.
all right, cool. Well, stick around, we'll finish the upload and stuff. And
Yes, sir.
thanks everybody for checking out the episode. Check out the
Thank
links
you.
below. Make sure you support, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.